Hello and welcome back to the OTB channel. I was going to release, as usual, a distro review on Saturday of this week, but I got waylaid a little bit with the debate that was going on about RMS and Linus Torvalds, so I produced something about that, as you might have seen. But I'd already downloaded the ISO file for PCLinuxOS. Now, it's a distro that seems to have had a bit of a checkered history, and its popularity has gone like that, from riding at number one at one point in the distro watch charts, which I know don't really matter, to going up and down. The main developer or founder, Techstar, was instrumental in making PCLinuxOS what it was, but he suffered from major health problems in recent years. I don't know what the current situation is with him, but the community seems to have taken PCLinuxOS over to an extent, and I wanted to see if it's still as good as it used to be. Back in 2007, it was one of the only distributions that had what I considered to be a decent live CD that would boot on most machines. I was an IT tech at the time, and I used it constantly for booting people's Windows machines that were infested in viruses and dragging files off prior to a reinstall. And it worked great. It was part of my toolbox. I haven't really looked at it for many years, so I thought, well, why not? Let's do a brief review. So let's get it started. You should now see on your screen the PCLinuxOS webpage, which looks a little bit different to how I remember it, but absolutely fine. Unlike how I remember back in 2007, when it was primarily a KDE distro with community spins, the standard distributions that can be downloaded now are KDE or Mate. There are also a whole range of community releases. Let's just have a look at what they do. KDE and Mini-Me. Okay, LXDE, LXQt, Mate, OpenBox, Trinity, XFCE, so plenty to choose from. However, I decided that what I would do, you won't be surprised to hear, is to download the Mate version, which I've already done. So let's see how it gets on. I've already set up a virtual machine. I've given it the usual 8 gig of RAM, 2 threads of my i5 processor, 32 gig virtual hard drive, and I've actually expanded the standard video memory to 32 megs. I've got the DVD ISO actually hooked up to the virtual optical drive here, and it's PCLinuxOS 64-Mate 2019-08, so released in August, so a very recent distribution. 2.06 gigs, which isn't too bad. For this demo or review, if you like, I've actually just set it up in standard BIOS mode rather than EFI. I wanted to avoid any problems, and this is going to be quite a brief review. So let's hit start and see what happens. Okay, so it's in the wrong place. Let's bring this halfway down the screen and just hit OK. Now, in the past, I have come across some PCLinuxOS distributions, the community spins, that I've struggled to get working in VirtualBox, which is why it's taken me so long to get to this. In fact, I had a go at looking at the Trinity version a few months ago. We never actually got a review because I couldn't actually get it working, but this one seems to be working okay so far, fingers crossed. And it booted pretty quick. Let's see if we can do anything though before we move on with the resolution. I see something interesting there. Let me just put this in full screen mode. In the control center, we actually have an option to install the VirtualBox guest editions. Right from within the live CD. I've no idea if this is going to work, but let's give it a go. It's clearly going to have a go at this, which I'm quite impressed at. Normally you have to put up with what you get on the live CDs, but if this actually works, that'll be great. Well, it's building the modules for the kernel, which seems to be kernel 5.2.8, so it's certainly a recent kernel. Let's see if this works. PCLinuxOS was always noted for being very, very user-friendly and for having lots of tools built in that saved you actually going to the command line, and my goodness, it seems to have worked. Let's just have a look at the displays. Well, you can't get better than that. 1920 by 1080. I think that's pretty impressive. Right, so what do I think? Right, well, a first look, I'm not sure about the wallpaper, to be honest. Is that right? Let's go to appearance and the background. What have we actually got chosen here? Zoom or scale? Aha, I think that's probably nearer to what the PCLinuxOS developers were looking for, rather than lots of little separate boxes. Okay, so it's an interesting looking Mate. We've got the panel at the bottom, Windows style, and another panel up here. Is this another panel up here? I don't think it is actually. Let's just have a look. No, it's not. It seems to be part of the wallpaper. Okay, probably I've got the wrong wallpaper settings, but no matter. Let's have a look here. The standard Mate menu. What sort of applications have we got? So in Grandpa, and Time Shift is already installed for backups. All the standard settings, Deconf Editor, Gparted. VBox guest editions there in the menu. Mate Tweak. NTFS configuration tool, not quite sure what that is. DD copy. Configure your printer. Okay, plenty there. LibreOffice 6.3 base. Okay, don't quite know why that's there, but we'll explore that once we get it installed. Documentation. Pluma as an editor. LibreOffice Math. Bitwarden. I've no idea what Bitwarden is, but we'll have a look at that afterwards. Kaja, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which I'm probably not, as the file manager. In Games, PySol Fan Club Edition. Okay. GIMP installed already. Mate colour selection. Screenshot tool, an Eye of Mate. And we have Firefox installed by default with Thunderbird. TeamViewer. Well, that's a useful program. It's interesting to see it installed already. And Megasync, I have no idea what that is. Right, it would appear that the full LibreOffice suite is there. There's a LibreOffice Manager as well. and of course Synaptic Package Manager. So this is the rather strange thing about PCLinuxOS. It has its roots in Mandrake and then Mandriva, and it uses the RPM package management system. However, rather than using something like Yum or one of the various RPM package managers that you see around now, DNF, etc., it uses apt for RPM, and Synaptic Package Manager is its default application for updating the system, which is really nice. Sciences, okay, LibreOffice Math. It has Audacity, Kodi installed by default, that's an unusual one. Spotify, VLC, Strawberry, and for video, Click Grab, Kazam. Okay, the same sort of things. So, 2.2 gig, not that bad, and it seems to come fully loaded. I also really like the icon set. I don't like the fact that we seem to have one click opening of folders configured at the moment, but that's a relatively simple thing to sort out. But I wonder what those icons actually are. Let's have a quick look. We've got the control center, the look and feel. The icons are Mate Faenza Dark. I may well have a look and install that on one of my other systems. But anyway, let's get on with this and hit the install me, and we'll see what happens. Right, so it uses Drac Live, so this is where the Mandriva roots come in. This wizard will help you to install the PCLinuxOS distribution. Hit next. So I'm going to hit next and let's see what happens. Well, we wait. And we wait a little bit more. Ah, no, here we are. Here is the content of your hard disk. Right, okay. There's nothing there. So what do we want to do? Use free space. I'm just going to go for the defaults to keep this simple. I do not like the Drac Live installer at all. But we'll see what it creates. So I've clicked next. I'll click next again. And we'll see what happens. Computing total size. The partitions you've selected will be formatted. Okay, great. Click next. Installing PCLinuxOS to your computer. Okay, so there wasn't a great deal of interaction required there, just a case of next and go. I assume then that either towards the end of the installation or perhaps on first boot, it will ask such things as my username and password. However, let's see how it goes. I'm going to pause this here and I'll come back when some sort of interaction is required from me. Less than 2 minutes on, I'm being asked what bootloader should I use and where should it be installed. Well, Grub2 obviously, and Dev SDA, it's the only hard drive I've got. Delay before booting, okay, 10 seconds. What's in the advanced? Okay, just a couple of options. So let's hit next. An append line to add to Grub, fine, and probe foreign OSs. Great, and finish. Bootloader installation in progress. I find it quite disconcerting when you get no sort of feedback, but I'm hoping this is just part and parcel of the process, but we will find out in a second. Okay, please click Finish, restart your computer and remove the live CD media when prompted. Right, well, I'll do this. It looks like I'm going to be asked for my username on first boot. So I will just pause this. I will reboot it and we'll come back once it's restarted. Okay, so I clicked Finish and expected the live DVD image to reboot. It didn't. The installer just closed and then I was able to shut down the operating system in the normal way. I actually prefer that because not all operating systems remove the DVD image, and if it automatically reboots when you click Finish, often you just reboot into the live image again. In this case, I've seen that the live image has been removed anyway, so let's click Start and see what happens. We'll go back into full screen mode. Right, okay. We've got the grub screen there. We've lost our resolution. I'm hoping that the VirtualBox guest editions are just as easy to reinstall on a live system, but we will see in a minute, hopefully. So it's booting from Grub, but we have no interaction at all at the moment. And don't forget, we haven't even got a user set up as yet. So hopefully something's going on now in the background and we'll find out in a second. Here we go. Right, what is your time zone? Well, America, aha. So we need to go all the way down to Europe. Oops. Not exactly the simplest way of navigating these things. Europe? Europe, okay. So let's just pick GB next. What's the best time to set? Set it to local time. It is 12:35 at the moment, so let's continue with that. Click Next. Set administrator for root password. Okay. I don't actually think it uses sudo by default on PCLinuxOS. So real name, OTB. Login name, OTB. Password. So that should set us all up. Next. Right, and this would appear to be the login screen. I'm not quite sure what that is, and I'm sure when we're in full screen mode it will look great. So, username, well, OTB. Password. Let's see what happens. Oh! Do you know, I was expecting us to have to fiddle about with the resolution, but it looks to me, yep, guest editions must be already installed, so that was nice and easy. And it's exactly the same, 164 updates available, as the live CD, which is great. I was wondering what LibreOffice Manager was. Oh, manage installation, update and removal and localization of LibreOffice. Okay, that could be quite useful. VLC, Spotify. What on earth is Strawberry? I've never actually come across that. It looks very much like an updated version of Amarok. I'm not familiar with it because Amarok was a KDE application, and so it's not something I use KDE all the time. Let's go into Control Center and see if there's anywhere to mess about with the one click. So the keyboard, let's have a look. What have we got here as the default layout? It's actually picked English UK, which is brilliant. What about the mouse? Right-handed? Yeah, great. Double click settings. Right, that's fine, but how do we set it so it double clicks? I can't instantly see that. We still have this single click to open everything up. I wonder if there's something else in the settings that I'm missing here. Let's have a look at preferences. Hardware. Mouse we've just had open. Okay. I would need to look that up, I think. So administration, preferences, hardware. Mate tweak? Who knows, could be. It doesn't say. Let me just pause this and I'll come back in a second. Right, I'm back. Because I've never installed an operating system that seemed to have single click activated by default, I wasn't quite sure where to go, but apparently it's in the Kaja preferences. So behavior, double click to open items. So it's in the file management preferences. And now, yeah, great. We're into straightforward double click. I'm really sorry, but I don't want my panel at the bottom. I would like it at the top, which is easy enough to change. I wonder if it has the brisk menu installed. It does actually have the brisk menu installed. I'm just going to add that in and then remove this. See if I can move this up. Aha. Not at the moment because everything's locked to the panel. Let's just unlock everything. Okay, it's probably this. That's it. If I now lock that to the panel, there we have the brisk menu, which is nice and straightforward. Personally, I'm not a great fan of lots of icons on the panel, so I will tend to remove them and bring my Windows list a little bit nearer to the brisk menu and lock that as well. Okay, so we now have something that looks a little bit more like something I would be looking for. Now, I'm going to do a little bit of research here because I'm not sure whether we would just use the standard apt-get commands to update it, or whether or not they recommend another method. So PCLinuxOS, how to update. See if they've got any pages here. And it's the first one in Google. It is recommended that you do a proper system update as outlined below once every week or two. PCLinuxOS does not automatically update kernels. One should install new kernels manually from Synaptic. Okay, fair enough. So it seems to be about running Synaptic. So let's open up Synaptic. Let's reload to make sure we have all the latest available packages there. And what does it say? As soon as Synaptic starts, it scans your system for existing software. Now you need to hit the reload button, basically, which I've already done. To become informed about new, removed or upgraded software. A window labelled downloading package information. Yeah, that's come about. Okay, next stage. Mark all upgrades. Mark additional required changes. Well, it seems to be taking the kernel latest there, despite what it just said. But I'm marking all additional changes. As it says, you'll get another window with the prompt marked additional required changes. Go through the list and click on mark. Right, fine. Now click on apply. So, perhaps we should have actually done a little bit more than that. So, mark all upgrades. Oh, 10 new packages will be installed. So, to be installed, right, it's going to use the new kernel. Well, I'm going to let it do that. I think that was my mistake. I shouldn't have highlighted the kernel as an upgrade, but I'm just going to go with this whole thing. And we're back, and everything went great. The grub screen came up, but this time it gave me the option of booting into the new kernel or the old kernel. I've gone back to this web page about how to update PCLinuxOS, and it's clear that Synaptic is very much the preferred method as far as the developers are concerned. It says at the bottom of this page, do not use apt-get update and apt-get upgrade from the command line. This has never been the recommended way. If you insist on using command line, the correct procedure is apt-get update and apt-get dist upgrade. Okay, so it's a distro that discourages the use of command line upgrading, which is quite unusual. But for new users, well, you've got Synaptic, and that's pretty good. I also see here that we've got an update notifier, which is great. And okay, the tick is telling us that our internet is up. And by the way, this Mega sync is actually a login to Mega if you have an account. Okay, I know very little about that, so I'm just going to shut that down. But overall, yeah, it's quite a polished looking Mate desktop. Seems a bit of a strange mix, RPMs and apt, but given that the developers clearly are not thinking that many users of PCLinuxOS are going to be spending much time on the command line, does it really matter? Probably not. Yeah, it's good. Let's have a chat about it. So that was just a brief look at the Mate version of PCLinuxOS that was released last month. It always used to be a distro that was very much targeted at people who are quite new to Linux, and I very rarely try to convert people to Linux. I did in the early days, but I found the normal problem that a lot of IT guys get into is that if you give somebody that they don't really know a new operating system, you end up being their support line, and it can become a bit frustrating. However, I did introduce quite a few people to PCLinuxOS back in the day, and I know that they ran it, certainly one of my friends ran it for several years, and he had been a Windows user prior to that, and he adapted to it absolutely fine. I've lost touch with him now. Perhaps I should get back in touch and see if he's still using it. It installs easily. It's a decent looking Mate installation. It comes pre-packed with lots of programs, and it's certainly geared up for people who don't want to use the command line or are uncomfortable with the command line. And I don't really think you do need to use the command line on a lot of Linux distros these days. Would I use it? Probably not. I've got enough distros installed already. I've just gone back to Vanilla Arch, by the way, which I'll talk about at a later date, which I installed because I actually like the job of putting something together myself. So I don't really want the finished article. PCLinuxOS is pretty much near to the finished article. It's a great distro. I hope it starts to rise again in popularity because you don't hear of it that much these days, but the community has stayed quite strong. So that's it for today. I realise I'm wearing an Ubuntu shirt, so apologies PCLinuxOS fans. I just threw something on this morning and only realised when I got to the end of this video. I'll see you next week. Well, that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, please like and subscribe. It really helps. And stay well until next time.